They played a really tough opponent, the best team in the country, in the Georgia Bulldogs, and took an L in Athens, right? I mean, there's a raucous environment. Kirby Smart and that program showing you what they have built over the course of several years there, the recruiting classes they've stacked. They were just the more developed product that we saw on Saturday. So where does that leave Tennessee right now? I think there's some bad news, and I think there's some good news for Tennessee as a whole. The bad news is you're probably not winning the SEC. That's not groundbreaking news. That's just kind of the fact of the matter where you find yourself right now in Knoxville, because what you would need to even get to Atlanta is for Georgia to lose 2 of these next 3 games. Now, here's the slate for you if you're Georgia. At Mississippi State, at Kentucky. That could be tricky if you were making a reach for maybe a game they could lose potentially. If you had to pick one, maybe that's the one you pick. I don't see it happening. Then you got Georgia Tech. Show me 2 losses in that 3-game stretch, and if that does somehow happen, I would be wildly amazed, but that's the gauntlet for them going forward. Again, probably not happening. So that's the bad news. To stay in that same vein of bad news, you don't control your own destiny with the college football playoff. You need some things to happen. Just kind of the fact of the matter. Now let's talk about good news. The good news is your college football playoff chances, regardless of what anyone else is telling you, are very much still in play. Vegas has you behind Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan in terms of your odds. So 4th best odds right now in Las Vegas for the bookmakers. The ESPN predictor machine has you at 58% to make the CFP if you win out. So here's the help you got this past weekend. You had Alabama lose, which that was one of the things that we were worried about, right? If you're a Tennessee fan, that's one of the things that was out there in the abyss of what if Alabama, in Alabama-like fashion, just runs the table, gets to Atlanta, wins the SEC. Well, then you might have 2 SEC teams in the playoff, just automatically based on how that whole thing plays out. Alabama's got 2 losses. They're probably not making the college football playoff. You had Clemson lose. That really helps you because an undefeated Clemson was getting in. Regardless of how you felt about Dabo or DJ Uyunglele, they were going to get in. They have 1 loss now. It doesn't look like they're going to be a factor in that equation. So now what do you need to happen? Well, first, you need to handle business. And that's not groundbreaking analysis. Everybody in Knoxville knows that. You need to win out. Another loss would eliminate you. You play Missouri this coming Saturday. You go to South Carolina, then you go to Vanderbilt. I think you probably should win all those games. You'll be favored in all those games. Handle business. Step 1. Step 2 is you hit your knees at night and pray to the good Lord for a TCU loss. Because a 1-loss TCU, we'll get to that in a second, but I like your resume over a 1-loss TCU team, even if they do win the Big 12 championship. Here's what they have next. They go to Texas this coming Saturday. We're about to break that game down, give you our prediction. They go to Texas. They go to Baylor. Got to go to Waco and play the Bears. Dave Aranda's still the head coach there. That translates to me feeling like Baylor's going to have a chance in every game they play. All right? They play Iowa State at home to end the year. Then you play the Big 12 championship game. A loss in any of those games would help Tennessee greatly. So that's what you're hoping for. Now, here's the resume for Tennessee. This is why I think you feel somewhat confident about what you have going forward. In terms of if it becomes a conversation, this is why you feel good about it. You have 5 ranked wins, and your 1 loss is to a top 5 team that will eventually tonight be crowned the top team in the country, in the Georgia Bulldogs. So if you're talking about a good loss, which I hate that phrase so much, feels like vinegar coming out of my mouth, you have a good loss, right? Like that's probably the reality when you look at the resume. Here's the resumes you would have up against you. A 1-loss, potentially Big Ten team. So Michigan and Ohio State, the assumption is, which is a dangerous word, the assumption is they get to that game both undefeated. The loser of that game, probably in the same room as Tennessee, hoping that they can find a way in. I like Tennessee's 5 ranked wins over either a Michigan or Ohio State having 2 ranked wins and 1 loss to one of their programs. So, I mean, good loss, probably still a good loss because Michigan or Ohio State will be a top 5 team. So maybe you're on par there, but only 2 ranked wins to your name throughout the rest of the season. I don't think you blame Michigan. I don't think you blame Ohio State, whether you agree with it or not. That's how the committee would sway. All right? So leave me out of it. That's what the committee would say. Then you talk about Clemson. They have an unranked loss. I like your resume better than them. And then TCU, they would have, in theory, I believe it's 4 or 5 ranked wins 4 ranked wins, but their one loss would be either to a ranked Texas or an unranked team throughout the rest of the way, if they're going to have that one ranked loss. Or they just don't win the Big 12, which leaves you out of it altogether. All right? So here's what I'm saying. The committee has taken you over a one-loss TCU, over a one-loss Clemson, over a one-loss Big 10 team that doesn't win the Big 10 title, Ohio State or Michigan. Here's the interesting thing that's going to come up when we talk about this going forward. Assuming the Pac-12 champion has one loss and it's Oregon, Oregon would have 5 ranked wins. All right, that's probably the most competitive player in this field from the Pac-12 to make the college football playoff. Have 5 ranked wins, in theory, if we're being generous. Here's where it gets interesting. Oregon's one loss is the same as your one loss. The only difference is their one loss was to Georgia by 46 points. Your one loss was to Georgia by 14 points. Again, I know you're not the conference champion, but I think the committee would put you in. So, to put it plainly, the path is still there. The path is still relatively broad, if you're asking me. Tennessee has a very realistic chance to still make the college football playoff. You're hoping and praying for a TCU loss. I don't think there's any other way to phrase it. There's no better PC way to phrase it. Now, here's the other thing I want to talk about with Tennessee. The challenge for you now is you have to still, like I said, handle business, but everybody around you, everybody on the external is going to start talking about, well, is Tennessee just kind of that flame that went out? Hey, they were a good story. They were playing really well. They still have probably a Heisman candidate in Hendon who will definitely be in New York. Will he win it now? Who knows? But that's all they are, a good story. The air went out of the balloon when they lost to Georgia, and now we're going to finally see what's Tennessee really like after a loss. I mean, now they're going to find their level. What's Tennessee really like? Folks, I wouldn't buy into that because I still see one of the best offenses in the country, still a really solid defensive line and linebacker group that's going to be able to stop the run, secondary still taking steps forward. Don't listen to all that external noise. The challenge for Tennessee internally is to not have that be true. Don't let it be a one loss kind of stops the momentum. I don't think that's the way Tennessee is viewing this, but I do think that's something you're going to hear and a question Tennessee will have to answer throughout the rest of their season. So is there a path for Tennessee? You had better believe there's a path for Tennessee. Need a little bit of help, but very, very possible. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.